Oh my god, these pretzels are so good. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for part 4 of Day 9 Daily number 396, Terran versus Protoss Mech. There was some chatter in the chat about, well, what about Zealot Archon against a mech army? One of the big things to note about Zealot Archon is that, yeah, it can be quite strong against a mech composition in a direct engagement. However, if you build enough Banshees right at the start, that helps steer what Protoss' composition can possibly be. And that's one thing that I really like quite a lot. And let me tell you, one of the coolest things of all time, if you're ever worried about some of your units being feedbacked, like a medivac being feedbacked and killed when you're going mech, you can EMP your own medivac. Heard that one from TLO. I would, right? So in this last part, I first want to watch one more hilarious game that's just really swingy, that helps highlights some strengths and weaknesses of mech from both points of view. And then I want to finish with one final game where In Control really demonstrates a concept that he was talking about, which is the mobility of Protoss versus the mobility of Terran. So what we're going to do is hop right into this game. Cool. We have Chance up in the top left. I'm speeding this up because this game is largely for comedy. Oh, God, of course we want to watch some comedy games. I'm getting all serious, trying to figure out new strats. And I'm going to eat a pretzel. So good. We have VP Chance versus 2 Messant Pie. 2 Messant Pie. I'm going to go ahead and go for the Hellion opening. All right. What are we seeing out of Chance? A fast War Prism play. Ooh, that's kind of cool. You can actually afford to throw down a Nexus in the middle bit of that as well. Here comes... Uh-oh, looks like an engineering bay going down. Looks like we are going for the very fast 2 factory with 2 add-ons. Makes sense. I better build an engineering bay because I'm not building a Raven. That said, Dark Templar would already be at your base right now, so be careful about that. About 7 minutes and 30 seconds they end up finishing. So... well, what do we have here? Okay. We have a pretzel. That's what we have here. Oh, it's so good. All right. I like this play so far by 2 Messant Pie. He's doing a little bit of a contain work with his Hellions. I think he might want to be a little bit more aggressive with Hellions. No, maybe not. Maybe just at the very least poke. But he's getting up a pretty fast third. How do you defend a really fast third? By starting up a lot of tanks. Excelente. Uh-oh. Ooh, the Hellions try to wander in. The Hellions get killed. The Warp Prism marches right into the main base, warps in. Oh no, there's units in our base. We try to come back to defend. We don't really do a good job of it. We're down to a really low food count. We've killed off 19 of our workers. Barely killing the Warp Prism. All looks very grim. Fortunately, tanks and Hellions are barely enough. And now it's 90 food versus 36. Gotta be careful against Warp Prisms early on. If you are trying to do some sort of tanky play, I don't even care if you're going Marine tank. Still something to be quite concerned about. So, of course, Chance builds up a huge army of Colossus. Oh, yeah, and he's getting his third up. He has this expand wall. He's going like Zealot Colossus, maybe to crush this third base. Losing a ton of everything. And then what does Chance do? He just briefly goes up here to make sure that there's no base. And so, oh, no, it doesn't work. That's fine. I'll just kill every prove you've ever made. Oh, no, oh. Dear Protoss players, care for your probes. Worry about them. Because if you are out of position just once, a meching player is going to do a lot of damage to you. Oh, what wins, a Colossus or the Hellions? Well, the answer is certainly not probes. So, the Protoss player goes on tilt 1As to Messant Pie, starts to lose. There aren't really that many probes lurking about, though. Kind of a rough spot. And I think that this is definitive evidence that Mech is really good. Nice. More of a way to say, hey, Protoss players, make sure you have really, really good building placement if you're up against a meching player. You can do cute things like create rings around your worker patch, where you build one pylon and it walls it off. And then all of a sudden, Blue Flame Hellions are not nearly as threatening as before. Very common to build a wall of buildings here and put 2 stalkers there, where if they unload, they can't run past up top. And this ends up being a fairly comical game. Boom. Boom. Hellions are the counter to Colossus. Great. I love that game. That game was hilarious. The reason that game is so funny to me is I think that will happen to everyone once. Where you're crushing and you're like, oh, I'm in such a good position. Yes. And then all those Hellions swing right around. And you're just like, oh my god. Oh my god. And they're like walking right up and they kill off all your probes. You're just, oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. And then they just like go into your main and you're like, I didn't wall off my main. What am I doing? Oh my god. Always a really common experience for someone to have once. Cool. Final game, we have Sterling versus EG's In Control. And In Control really puts, I think it does a really great example of what I've been talking about this whole daily, which is don't use the shortcut terminology. You have to use the underlying StarCraft idea behind it. So again, Terran struggles from mobility with Mech, because the tanks have to siege up and be in one place. And the Protoss can exploit that by counter-attacking. Notice how it's so important that you have that underlying idea. I'm going to attack where these siege tanks are not. Excellent. So we're going to see In Control open up with a very aggressive play. Sterling is going to be opening up with a fast Joink Reactor. And there is the command center going down. Now, if you are in control at this point in time, what you are likely going to see in a second is a reactor when you end up marching up there. We have a very fast robo facility. He is going 3-gate robo. It's pretty common on this map. I mean, if he's going fast gas, his possibilities are either Banshee or 111, or he's going reactor expand. This opening is going to work out great as long as you're really aggressive against an expand. And it looks like Sterling goes for the fast Banshee play. Or, excuse me, fast tank play. So he's going to be going for tanks. This is a little bit more Void Ray proof than some other builds. Sterling is making a lot of Marines because he wants to build plenty of bunkers. And immediately we see some of the strengths of this opening of the siege tank play, but you have to be really careful with the siege tank placement. I think the siege tanks should be placed back even a little farther than that, like probably right back here, until you get more of them. And this is one of these important moments where it's so critical that you do your scout timings. There should be an SCV trying to march up here pretty early, just to check if there's an expand coming up. Sterling barely defends. He's getting a Raven. Ravens are good. Point defense drone against a largely Stalker army. In Control continues to push. Very difficult. And again, this is not an all-in from In Control. He's expanding. Just attacking where the tanks are not and using those Immortals to really bust in there and try to pick off the siege tanks. Barely defending. About as barely as you can get. And hey, if he has trouble with mobility, let me get up a Warp Prism. The big focus of this one game should be mobility. Sterling is going to begin getting himself a lot of tanks, still making Marines 2 at a time. I think that that's a very hard thing to do intuitively, just to sort of look at the situation and think, yeah, you know what, I really need to keep making Marines, even though I'm going mech. But I think until you get a very stable shot at going for a third, I think you should probably still be making Marines. Banshee harassment, trying to pin some of these units back. In Control's pretty far down the line. And this is a very different mixture from the other games, you know, where there were all sorts of Thors and all that sort of thing. But it's going to be, again, about mobility and positioning this game. Look at In Control. The instant you leave your base, cool. Just going to march right in here. I'm just going to start killing some stuff off. Hiding the Warp Prism every which way. Now, as a Protoss player, I'd probably want to be expanding back here and here as my third and fourth bases. Probably not to this one, because it's very easy for a meching player to just siege up tanks and go kill that off. This game is super long, so I'm just going to breeze through it, so that way we have time for questions. There are some flubs that end up happening on both sides, but it's such a marvelous example of just this mobility problem that Mech has and how Terrans can exploit it. Again, Sterling, love this. Love any sort of like blue flame Hellion drops at any point in the game. Love it. Sterling, we're going to see, moves his entire army in one gigantic big block, which I don't like so much. In Control pulls all his probes just in time to really suffer no damages. But Sterling has, as you can see here, he has one control group that is his tanks. So it's kind of that medic marining problem we were talking about earlier, where if you go medivac marine too often, you get used to just having a big clump of stuff rapidly sprinting around the map. This is hard to break no matter what you have, but look at this. Sterling is throwing down some planetary fortresses. Expanding a little too rapidly. I don't like this expand. I would prefer to expand here, so that way we can just waltz up here, kill this off, and then begin taking that. And then I'd probably even take this base as my 5th, and just begin chewing towards him. Look at In Control. In Control has never had his army anywhere close to this. Sure, In Control is running the risk of losing this base. In Control just moves right on over here. Cool. Sterling, though, if you look at this, Sterling has all his tanks here. If Sterling sent 3 tanks and 2 Hellions here and just sieged up, this base would be falling very rapidly. He is building these 2 planetary fortresses to help take it out. But look at In Control, just engages, and once they siege up, pulls back. Pretty simple logic for a Protoss player to do. But just have to be very careful with your positioning. Again, see, I dislike this whole boxing everything and going for it. Love these planetary fortresses. Oh, that's so awesome. Sterling, by the way, in case you haven't seen the power of tanks. Alright, there's the siege up. There's a dead Nexus. 2-shotting Nexuses is good in any matchup. Especially in Nexus Wars. Oh, yeah. And look, suddenly, In Control, despite having not really gotten in any big engagements, despite having lost a frick ton of workers at a really poor time, is actually doing okay with 0 engagements. He has a base up here, and once he begins picking off this army, he's going to retake this base over here. And look at this, wandering all the way down here. Ordinarily, I would say something like, I think In Control would definitely benefit from a Warp Prism harass up here, or some sort of Blink play. I think Blink works, Warp Prism doesn't, because In Control is just suffering some serious losses this game. I mean, neither player really has a mining base. And this is why I think it's important to split your army up. Not only are tanks quite good in small numbers, but, I mean, 30 tanks is pretty much going to do the exact same thing as 20 tanks. Look at the cool movement. In Control expanding on opposite corners. This is going to be a really difficult thing, I think, for anyone who starts exploring that to deal with, is how to split this army up properly, and I think that that is where a big difficulty lies. I would say for your mobile Marine Maraudering player, because you're so fast and ninjetty, the difficult question is, do I engage this or do I not? For a slower army, like what Sterling is making, where it's all tanks and, hell, planetary fortresses, it's, how do I control these points with how many units? How many do I leave? Look at In Control, jeez, keeping his units so far away. In Control, who was way behind for a lot of the game, just pulling right back ahead, like it's nothing. But keep in mind, Sterling, who I would say is not doing the most refined mech play, is still doing quite well. I mean, is still hitting the T button consistently. I think this was a little bit of a flub getting into a back corner. But this is what also makes Mech so strong. I've been lauding In Control for the last 20 minutes of this game with his runaround tactics. The one time In Control is finally getting a food lead, he is caught off guard, he can't retreat all of a sudden. He can't exploit his mobility. And with no sieging at all, In Control's entire army gets crushed. He loses this expansion, and suddenly In Control is not mining, and Sterling is. He's mining from his planetary fortress, it's so funny. I like this as a final game to wrap up this PvT Mech survey, because I don't think it is that Mech is really, really good. So good that protosses should be shaken in their boots. And I don't think it is as easy as, oh yeah, Protoss just runs around, kills stuff off, done and done. Instead, what I'm saying is, it is reasonable enough to do that it needs to be explored. There's a lot of healthy space here where cool things can go on. Sterling, I don't know if you can get away with building this many tanks, but it certainly seems to be working, and despite an immortal Archon force, is able to take it out. Both players demonstrate some really nice tactical knowledge and manage to get into a ridiculously, stupidly even game. I will say the fact that it's Xel'Naga Caverns is definitely helping Sterling quite a bit. In particular, his ability to lock down this gold and secure his own gold. But even on a map like Antigua Shipyard, a very large map, it's not as easy to run around the fringes of the map. Warp prisms become more important. Sterling would have to have a more refined opening. And what I want to do is bring you right to the brink of the edge of this game. And then I'm just going to stop and take some questions. Ha ha ha. Oh man. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's go ahead and take some questions because I want to go eat pretzels. What's the URL for the question grabber? Alright, cool. We did about a 2-hour daily. So that's cool. And I hope that a lot of the meching players out there start to really think hard about the best way to get an opening that secures them a lot of defense against all the varying possibilities. I hope that people who explore it can think of clever ways to continue to apply pressure on the Protoss by forcing them to have certain unit compositions. If I build a lot of Banshees, then you're somehow limited. I feel like Terrans should definitely try to figure out ways to deal with Protosses who are very good at blinking around and counterattacking, which is what we saw from White Rod, what we saw from In Control. Very solid ways to just manipulate the Terran siege tank lines. And of course, Terran players figure out how to spread your siege tanks out properly. Yeah. Yeah. Jiwa's Copter. Day 9, why do you think that Mech isn't used at the pro level in TvP? New ideas will always take a while to be implemented in full. And generally what happens is someone steps in with a knockout style and there's a lot of mimicking. Envision for a moment if StarCraft 2 had just begun again and somehow someone figured out a really solid mech style. And a bunch of people started exploring it and figured out some really solid openings for it, which is exactly what we saw in parts 1 and 2. Absolutely unshakable openings, it seemed. And everyone just started to pick up on that. Cool. If a new player comes in, and a new player says, well, I'm struggling in Terran vs. Protoss, what do I do? People would say, well, why don't you just go watch replays of Thorzane? He has a really great mech play, and it's really easy. And then people would start to call mech standard. Right? And then all of a sudden it would become like the linchpin style strategy. Like, oh yeah, mech's like really, really, really good. And there you go. And then that would... What the hell am I talking about? God, my brain just shut down. I cannot focus for 2 hours straight. That's why it's so hard for me to watch movies. I like TV shows where they're split into 20 minutes of understanding, and then I can stop and review my notes. So... That's right. Oh yeah, envision if it was start over and Mech was a standard and people were calling that the standard, and that is what would rise to the top because there were so many eyeballs looking at it. And then what happens if someone said, well, what do you think about Marine Marauder Medivac? It seems really mobile. People would immediately, instinctually say things like, well, you'd be easily sliced in half by force fields. I mean, first of all, in big engagements, Colossi and Storm would crush you. I mean, Storm crushes Marine Marauder. I mean, it's not nearly as good as tank. I mean, tanks can withstand a lot of hits. Even Hellions can take some good punishment and can easily run out of the way. And what about early attacks? Well, you'll get cut in half by force fields and this sort of thing. There's plenty of reasons why bio should also really, really suck. But there are so many eyes looking at it and so much research on it that suddenly it stops going from, oh, well, yeah, you know, force fields are going to cut you in half. It stops being that shortcut answer and gets to something specific. Like, if I push right now, he only has 3 force fields. So he can cut me in half once, but when I push forward again, he doesn't have enough energy to deal with all my units unless he morphs in 3 more sentries, in which case he doesn't have enough firepower to take me on. And that's why this is a good timing push. Those are the sort of specifics that are important. Let's see here. Macho says, Day 9, do you agree that Mech is better on smaller maps and gets worse the bigger a map is? Smaller is one variable that I think helps, but there's a lot of large maps that would have a lot of closed off spaces and would make it very difficult for any counterattacking to happen, and any tank push has a clear straight path. Openness tends to hurt Mech. Like for instance right here in this game, see these thin little lanes right here? Pretty damn nice for Mech. Pretty damn nice. Expansion placement. If you can expand along the direction of attack, helps Mech. If you have to have disparately placed expansions, it's difficult for Mech. Yeah. Yeah. Let us see here. Oh, here's an interesting question. I'll take this and one more. Protoss Warrior. Day 9, what is your opinion on focusing on more tanks versus focusing on more Thors in mid-game? And why getting mass tanks in late game is better? I don't know if I necessarily think that, well, in big army engagements, tanks are just so ridiculously stupidly good in high numbers, because the splash is just way better. But in small numbers, I think Thors work a little bit better because, I guess because the tanks cannot fully exploit the fact that they do splash damage. If there's 10 units coming at your 2 tanks and the 2 tanks fire, maybe 4 units total will take splash damage. In huge armies, those 2 tanks fire, there's like 20 units that take splash damage. And Thors are nice and easy to repair in those small numbers too, but more difficult to defend in the mid and late game stages. What do I think? I actually think it's still really important no matter what stage you are. Obviously, you want to begin ratcheting up the tank count because they work well in big armies, but I still think that, I don't know if I would say that getting mass tanks in late game is better straight up. I still like how effective Thor Banshee is, start to finish. I really think that that's going to be super important. Going to have to be really careful against protosses who get a lot of Templar, obviously. But you can't have that many Templar without sacrificing some of the rest of your army. I'm going to take another question, then I'm going to go eat, man. That has been a long daily. Wow. Whoa! Boxy12. We didn't see any of these games, but I'll answer it anyways. Day 9, how do you think Mech would fare against a Stargate opening from Protoss? In fact, probably one of the biggest fears that I have when I do that really super solid ultra opening that we saw in the first 3 games is a player who recognizes I'm going Mech, and he just instantly builds 3 Stargates, starts chrono boosting Void Rays, and then just attacks me head on. Void Rays that are clustered are bad against Thors. Void Rays that are spread out a little bit are great against Thors. The Marines will help with that a lot. I'd probably have to keep making Marines a lot. You know, if a player was going Stargate against me, I'm going to say something out loud, and I don't know if I agree with it. Depending on how many air units he makes, I'd probably want to really build almost no tanks. Maybe 2. And then all the rest Hellion, Thor, and Marines from my reactor racks. I don't know. I really don't. Maybe the solution that I would go for is give that reactor to the starport and start going Thor, Hellion, Viking, and be very aggressive, because air, if you're being aggressive, the air units have to come back and defend. And the fact that they're air units, suddenly they can't exploit at all. Air units can fly over terrain and hit you in places and be ninja and run around and stuff. But if you're attacking, they have to sit and stay at home, and they may as well be ground units at that point. So, that's cool. I'm done. I hope that was a useful survey. where my main goal with this is to pray that this serves as a platform for people to begin researching, not for people to declare it as broken or declare it as easy to break. Because I think that what I've seen here is there is enough on both sides for me to feel like a new style could just settle comfortably in the back of Terran's pockets. Fun Day Monday is the 1-2-3 for all, where you must play in a free-for-all where you are allowed to build only one unit that you will publicly announce at the start of the game. Every time a player dies, that is, every time a player leaves the game, you may then build a second and then a third unit. You may build one additional unit per person that dies, all publicly announced, for a grand total of 3 units. You have to stop at 3, hence 1-2-3 for all. Even if you're playing a 12-person FFA, it is a 1-2-3 for all, stop at 3. For Sunday, I'll be doing a little something that I call State of the Union of Esports for 2012. I did it for 2011. It's a new year. It's time to have some new goals. We'll talk about those on Sunday. Until then, hop on the ladder. Don't be scared of that find match button. Find a friend, have some fun, and I'm done. Peace out, guys. Oh yeah, submit to me your Fun Day Monday replays at Monday at day9.tv. Monday at day9.